Finding an appropriate load for the 308 Winchester was an exercise that pointed out several of the practices that we think are extremely important in keeping you safe in reloading. Selecting the load and the measuring of the powder are the two areas where I think there's the most opportunity for you to get into trouble. And to avoid concerns or problems in selecting the load, we believe very strongly that you should use multiple manuals and that you should find a given load corroborated in several mainstream, credible, published, current manuals before you proceed with the reload. That's why we believe very strongly in another practice for new reloaders, and that is that you limit your purchases of bullets to a particular family of bullet, because that way you can source the manual for that entire family. Nobody's going to give you more credible, more volume data on a family of bullets than the bullet manufacturer. Likewise with the powders. If you limit yourself to a particular powder manufacturer, you can limit yourself to a manual that's going to give you the most variety of data for that family of powders. Now, if you notice in my inventory, most of my bullets are Hornady. I found two particular ones that are nice starting points for the 308 load. One's 150 grain Full Metal Jacket boat tail, which is, according to both Hornady and my experience with it, a great target load. Very accurate. The second one is 165 grain boat tail spire point, which is a great hunting round. And this is the one we're going to focus on today. Now, because these are Hornady manual is obviously a starting point. If you'll notice in their manual, they have their data not just for an individual bullet, for an actual entire family of bullets. And this is relevant, and we'll explain why in a moment. But the bottom line is all of these 165 grain and these 268 grain bullets all rely on this exact same performance. So Hornady is basically telling us that for these loads, any of these bullets are essentially interchangeable with these quantities of powder for these anticipated velocities. So we found the 165 grain boat tail spire point in this manual. So now we're going to look at the Hodgdon manual, which is my go-to powder manufacturer, and I can't find this boat tail spire point, but I can find the 165 grain spire point, which does not have the boat tail. It has a flat base on it, but because I can rely on both of those bullets in this manual using the same data, I can safely compare this data with the data in the Hodgdon manual. Now, Hornady also says in the beginning of their 308 chapter, at the beginning of each bullet, there's a summary of it, and they also tell you which powders gave the best performance. And in this instance, IMR 4064 and Varget provided the best results throughout the range of bullets. I happen to have Varget. I like Varget, so we're going to look at Varget. So as you can see on the screen, we found a great load for the 165 boat tail spire point in the Hornady book for Varget. The range is 32.6 grains up to 44 grains. We found a similar but not identical load in the Hodgdon manual. It is for Varget, it is for the 165 grain interlock spire point, but not the boat tail. Now, if you recall, because Hornady says we can use those bullets interchangeably, that's the only time I would use bullet data interchangeably is when the actual bullet manufacturer tells you you can. We can safely compare these two loads. Now, if you look at the Varget load in the Hodgdon book, they didn't start their load until the 42 grain level, which produced a velocity that was between 25 and 2600. But if you look at the Hornady data, 41.7 grains, which is almost identical, is anticipated to give you 2,500 feet per second. So the 42 grains for something between 25 and 2,600 is extremely close. What that means is there is virtual agreement between Hodgdon on Varget and Hornady on Varget for that bullet or that bullet family, that in the 41.7 to 42 grain area, we're going to have something in the 2,500 to 2,600 feet per second range velocity. Because of that, and because the other major tenet for reloading is to start at the minimum published load, we're going to start at the minimum Varget load for 2,100 feet per second with 32.6 grains of Varget in the Hornady manual for the 165 grain interlock boat tail spire point. That's our load, and that's what we're going to use for this series of videos.